This podcast, The Good, the Bad and the Vagina, is brought to you by me, Tess Lovely, a retired midwife, birth keeper, mother and sovereign woman. The views shared are my own and those of my guests. If something doesn't resonate, release it. It's not meant to upset or offend. If you feel discomfort, please seek support for your own healing. If you don't like what you hear, don't listen. This space honours truth, freedom and expression, protected under the rights to free speech. Welcome to The Good, the Bad and the Vagina. Let's get started. Hello, Ellie, and welcome to The Good, the Bad and the Vagina. I am so excited to have you on here. I have been waiting for such a long time. I did actually want you on as my very first guest, but you are such a busy woman that unfortunately, you were poorly. Yes, you were very poorly, and I just couldn't get you on. So here we are, finally. Now, Ellie, you and I met about 9 years ago.
Something like that. Yeah.
When I began working at the hospital where you are currently working, and we just kind of hit it off. But you have that wonderful personality where I think you could hit it off with a sword.
I don't know, come out on top though. A sword. Okay, lovely analogy.
I don't even know where that came.
Oh, it's going to be one of those, isn't it? Our normal conversations.
Yeah.
Absolute nonsense. Oh,
Yeah.
I do love you.
And I love you. Yeah. So we met, and I have always referred to you as the encyclopedia for me, because I have a knowing within my field of midwifery that, you know, I just have this information and this knowledge, but I was shit at getting the evidence to back up what I knew. And I could always go to Ellie and go, can I have a piece of evidence to support this comment? This knowing that I have. Apparently now I need to have evidence to prove that I know it.
Yeah, I'm like the yin to your yang and all that.
Yeah. And you always refer to me as your oracle. So we kind of, as a unit together, we are fucking awesome. I'm going to say it.
Read a bubble.
We are fucking awesome. And we have been called some interesting names along on our journey, but we'll come to that at some other point. So over to you, Ellie. I know predominantly in this episode, we're going to talk about your birthing experiences and things like that. But I'm sure that some of our midwifery experiences are going to come out. Ellie, the midwife extraordinaire, the cowboy midwife. Over to you, my gorgeousness.
Thank you very much, Tess. Lovely by name, lovely by nature. So I'm Ellie. I am a midwife and a mother of 4. And I thought today we could just talk about my birth experiences and how that impacted and how that made me want to be a midwife. If that's okay, that's what I'd like to get into today. We can do some other stuff another time, but let's stick to the basics of how I got here, and then ultimately how I met you, I suppose. We could put that in, can we?
Yeah. We can talk about whatever we wish.
Talk about anything. Yeah, that's what we're here for. So in 1994, I was 19, and changing childbirth was the brand new midwifery model of care. I didn't know anything about that at the time. I was just this naive 19-year-old A-level student. The midwife that I was assigned to, they started this team integrated midwifery thing, and I was a low risk first time mum, and my midwife said to me, "Oh, you're a great candidate for a home birth." And I was like, "Oh no, couldn't possibly have a home birth. That's far too dangerous." And they tried all the way through the pregnancy they kept bringing up home birth. They weren't pushy, they were a little bit pushy. They weren't coercive. It was gentle. They just were really keen for me to have a home birth because I was just like this perfect candidate for one. And I kept saying no. So the early hours of the morning that I went into labour, I'd moved house 2 days before, and I'd gone for a walk the day before, and I'd had this craving for apples. So I must have eaten half a dozen green apples, and I woke up about 3 a.m. in absolute agony. And I just thought, oh my God, I've really done this to myself. And I went to the bathroom a few times, and this stomach pain was like a severe period pain, and it just was just there for about 2 hours, and then it suddenly went away. And I thought, oh, thank the Lord. And then 2 minutes later, it came back, and then it went, and then it came back, and I thought maybe it's labour. And so I had 2 hours of that, and then 2 hours of the tummy ache, and then this on and off pain started. Every couple of minutes there was this pain, and it lasted ages. It was really uncomfortable. I suffered about half an hour of that, and then I called, well, my partner at the time called the midwife. We'd just moved house. It's 1994. We didn't have mobile phones. We didn't even have a landline at that point, so we had to run down to the phone box and call the midwives. And this lovely midwife came out, and she examined me at home, and she went, "Oh, you're 8 centimeters. She said, let's stay at home and have a home birth." And I'm still like, no, 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 going to hospital. So packed me up and went into the hospital. I was on the gas and air by the time I got there, because she'd brought some with me, and I was loving that. I was a little bit out of it on the gas, but I do remember them trying to strap this monitor thing around me and pulling it off and saying, like, no, no, that's horrible. Not having that. So I refused to have it. And I don't remember if they listened in with a Doppler, a sonic aid, anything like that. I don't remember. I just remember this monitor that I pulled off. And then I remember them examining me again. And she said, "I'm just going to break your waters." And she just ruptured my membranes, and that because she had been saying to me, "Come on, push, you're fully dilated, push, push." And I was going, I don't need to push. And I was on my back, semi-recumbent, the usual. She broke my waters, and that overwhelming urge just to push I just couldn't describe it. And I was just like that. And I remember I kept trying to put my knees together. And she kept open and saying, "You need to leave your legs open." And I kept trying to close them. And then she's got another midwife in to hold my legs open. I was 19. I was like, do you know what? Now looking back on it, I realised, that none of that should have happened. At the time, I wasn't traumatised by it. It didn't affect me. And so I birthed this baby 29 minutes after I got into the hospital. I looked at her and I just went, I should have had a home birth. I ended up staying in hospital for about 3 days because she wouldn't feed, and they were concerned about it. And there was all sorts of things going on. And I was very young and very naive. Anyway, about 6 years later, I got pregnant with my second child. And she was a planned home birth from the beginning. I thought, there's no way I'm going in. This was so easy. I'm just staying at home. That's what they wanted me to do. And nothing happened. Nothing untoward happened. So I planned this lovely home birth. And on the morning that I went into labour, I think it was rough, probably about 8, 9 o'clock in the morning. So that first labour from start to when the placenta was out was 3.5 hours. It was so quick.
Especially for a first-time mum, that's really, really incredible.
But I was young, and we're kind of built to do it like that, aren't we? I think we do. And because I was so naive, and there was none of this having referrals for things and fetal movements or anything like that. You just got pregnant, grew a human, and birthed it. In my opinion, that's how it was, and that's how it happened for people around me.
I think it's that fear, isn't it, that they've generated into it now that makes it different.
Yeah, it very much does. And so it was, I had no trauma from it. It was just a birth. It was fine. So I was planning this second birth. So the first one, I think I was 2 days before my estimated due date. So this one was maybe about the day before my estimated due date. And it's about 8 o'clock in the morning, I think. And this tummy pain started like it had with the previous one. So I thought, oh, I'm going into labour. So I called my husband home from work, and he was on an early shift, and then I called the midwives, and they would talk to me over the phone. You don't sound like you're in labour. And I said, "Oh, I am. This is going to happen really quickly. It did last time. I feel it. This is exactly the same." Yeah. And I must have phoned 3 or 4 times asking them to come over the next 2 hours, and they just kept saying, "No, just stay at home a bit longer, have a bath, do this, blah, blah." I did try a bath. I got in and had one contraction. I felt like a beached whale. I couldn't get out, couldn't move. I got out after it had gone, and I thought, I'm never getting in there again. So I carried on just plodding along, and then the 2 hours passed, and then the contraction, the whole contraction thing started. So I called back again, and they were like, "Give it an hour." And I was like, "I really need someone to come." And they were like, "Yeah, well. So I just gave up, and I just thought, I'm just going to end up doing this on my own. And then the doorbell rang. My husband went downstairs. It was the midwife. Let her in, and as she came up the stairs, I was just climbing onto my bed. My water's broken. My baby came out. So she was only on the stairs. So I, they called it a BBA, born before arrival, which I went with for a long time. Now I kind of call it an unplanned free birth. And so she was there, and then my placenta. She was lovely. She was on call, and she'd just been called and said, "Oh, just." I think she had been like probably told to just come and placate this woman. And she came up the stairs, and she had some gloves, some gel, and a Sonicade. That's all she had with her. So she had to go and get her kit after. And she was lovely. She put a wash load on, and she did some dishes and all sorts of things. She was lovely. So I was so. I have heard of people since that have said that they would have found that traumatic, but I found it so empowering. I just thought, this was easy. This was so easy, and you didn't listen to me. I could do your job.
Well, this is the big thing for me, is about women not being heard. Women know their bodies more than they live in that body. Who are we as a professional? We know an average of what may or may not happen. But
Yeah.
when a woman is saying to you, no, this is how it's going to be, we should hear that.
We
Really
should.
hear it. We should be there.
Even if they're wrong and it's not what they think, it doesn't matter.
No.
We should be listening to them. They're saying it for a reason, whether that's because they know, because they're fearful, whatever it is. It's a little bit concerned. We do need to listen to them.
Yeah.
And I didn't feel listened to, and I just thought I could do your job, and that kind of sparked that little nugget
That
in
was
my
the
head.
seed.
That was the seed, and I was like, I'm going to do this. And I thought about it at that point, but it was just I had a career. I just could not afford to give up my career and go back and retrain. And I kind of put it out of my mind, and I never did any research on midwifery or birth or anything. I just thought, I've had my family, that's it, I'm done. And then 9 years, I think it was, after that, I was remarried to someone else, and
Was
I
that
hadn't
number
found
18?
number two. I was number two husband, and I hadn't planned on having any more children. And then I think I must have hit maybe 33, and I started thinking, I think I want another baby. I definitely want another baby. So we started trying. I was 35 when my first son was born, and stupidly, I thought, I'm 35, and I think, I can't remember. I wasn't up to date with midwifery. I wasn't a midwife. Hadn't really done any research still, and I thought, am I too old? I think 35 might have been cut off then for increased maternal age
It
at the
was.
time.
You
Yeah,
geriatric mother, you.
yeah.
No,
That's
I
exactly.
hate that. I absolutely detest that terminology.
I don't even like
Absolutely.
advanced maternal age. I don't even think about people's ages when they're having
It
babies.
doesn't matter. If you're able to get pregnant, then fucking hell, your body's capable of carrying a
Well,
pregnancy.
I'm 51 now and having some menopausal things, and my GP said you still have to use protection till you're 55 because you can still get pregnant. I was like horrified. No more. But yeah, so yeah, you can get pregnant.
Well, I had
Apparently.
Rio at 45.
Yeah.
So you were geriatric mother.
I was geriatric mother, and I thought, yeah, it's probably, and it's been 9 years, it's probably safer if I have a baby in hospital. And then my GP said to me, are you planning another home birth? And I said, no, I don't think so. And she went, good, because if you were, I wouldn't be able to care for you in your pregnancy, because I don't believe in home births. Again, at the time, it didn't.
I forgot my pregnancy's all about you.
But again, wasn't a midwife. It didn't bother me one way or the other. I had no opinion. Now I'd be like that. If someone said that to me, one of the women on my caseload said that their GP had said that, I'd be writing letters of complaints and all sorts of things and getting up in arms. But at the time, I was just like that. So he must have come roughly around a day or two after my estimated due date, and it was different this time. I had a contraction in the middle of the afternoon, just one. And that was that. And I thought, oh, maybe I'm having a baby soon. So I did call a midwife, and she came out and she was like, no, you're not in labour. So I just carried on about my day, went to bed, and I must have got up at I think it must have been about about 3 again in the morning, and I was contracting. So I called the hospital and said that we were coming in. So in we went. I think we got in about 4:15 in the morning. I was contracting really long, strong. Felt it was going to happen. Quite uncomfortable. And had a midwife, and she examined me. And she went, "Oh, you're 5 centimeters." Oh crap! Sorry, I've broken your waters. Um, and she didn't have like a hook. I just think she did it while she was examining me. I don't think she meant to. I know it's quite difficult to, unless they're bold. Some are easier than others. Anyway, she said, I was like that. Oh, okay. And then she said, I'm just going to go out the room and get some paperwork. Um, and I said, can I have the gas? So she gave me that. And she went out the room. She'd been gone out the room 2 minutes. And I was like that. I need to put. I need to put. Get the midwife. So my husband went and got the midwife. Can I tell you a funny story about this? When she examined me and I was 5 centimeters, my waters broke. My husband, this was his first baby. He said to her, he said, so how long's this going to be? And she went, oh, I don't know. She said, but if nothing's happened, we'll examine again in 4 hours. It was like that. Right. And he just, this 4 hours stuck in his head. So he started making a coffee in the corner. We had all this tea and coffee makers. And I'm going to need, get her in here, get her in here. And she came in, I went, I need to push. She went, well, push. And I went, but you said I'm only 5 centimeters. And she went, oh, that was 5 minutes ago. She went, you've done this before. Just go with what your body tells you to do, all that sort of thing. And so I'm like that. I'm not doing it on a bed. She went, you don't have to. And back then it wasn't the same bed. So I vaguely remember her pulling the mattress off the bed onto the floor so I could kneel on it and lean on the bed frame. And I'm kneeling on the floor and I'm pushing. And she sat in the corner starting her notes, and I'm like breathing this baby down and little pushes and what have you. And he's still making this cup of coffee. And I'm going, it's coming, it's coming. And she's like, all right. And then I went, heads out. And she went, oh yeah. And then she came over, put a pen down, came over. And my husband stood there. And she went, do you want to see? Do you want to see the head? And he went, yeah. And he's still stirring his coffee. And he looks down and there's this whole head. And he said afterwards, he was thinking he was just going to see like this little tiny bit of head. And he saw this whole head and he's going, 4 hours. And he thought it was going to be still another 4 hours. He was obsessed with this 4 hour thing. Anyway, then this baby was born. He was born like 20 minutes after I got into hospital. It was all it was very quick, very beautiful. I loved it. And then I went home. And then baby number 4 came along 2 years later, and he was pretty similar. I still didn't want to have a home birth, still wasn't a midwife. And I went into the hospital, same as ever. And she examined me, she went, you're a centimetre. And I was like, no, I'm not. No way. And she was going on about this latent phase of labour. I'm like, no, never heard of it. Never had that before. I'm not having it this time. And she was like, you need to go home. I was like, no. So they tried to take me down to the ward. I was contracting back to back contractions. They were exactly the same as all my others. They took me down to the ward, and the midwife that took me down there, she went, I can't put you on here. She said, you're making far too much noise. She went, come on, let's go back to labour ward. So she took me back to labour, and they popped me in a bath. And this time it was all right. It was a nice little shallow bath. And I think I was in the bath for about half an hour. I got out. This midwife examined me again, and she went, oh, you're 5 centimetres. I was like, oh, thank God for that. Give me the gas. And he was probably born 10 minutes after that, almost on the birthing stool. She suggested a birth stool. So I was just climbing on it, and he came out. So that was that. So it was all very, very, they were just lovely births, really. I know that to some midwives and birth keepers and doulas, some of them would sound a little bit like intervened with and a little bit, what's the word I'm looking for? Not
physiological.
Not totally physiological. But at that time, to me, they were easy. And so I took I took my maternity leave. So I'd always worked full time, even after the girls. And then when I had my first son, I went back to work part time. And then when I had my second son, I was on maternity leave. And come the end of maternity leave, it just putting both of them in, because I'd always had such big age difference. It was only ever one at a time. This was 2 little people. Putting them in daycare was expensive, and it didn't work out financially viable to do that. So I sort of negotiated with my husband about having a year or 2 off. So that's what I did. And it was during that time I started thinking, this is a really good opportunity. I can really do this now. So I broached it with him and said, look, I've had 2 years off. do you think it'll hurt if I had another 3? So he said, oh, I think we can make it work. So I applied and started my midwifery training in 2013. What's 12 years ago? So not that long ago. That was a real eye-opener. I was so naive. I was 39 and completely naive about birth, even though I'd had 4 nice, easy vaginal births.
What made you think you were naive about it?
Because I thought I was going to be basically a doula with a degree. And I didn't really even know what a doula was. I just thought I was going to be like this. It was just going to be this wonderful airy fairy thing where I was just going to support women to have their beautiful babies in hospital, out of hospital, whatever. I just thought women would just most women just got pregnant, grew a human like I did, just birthed it, went home and went about their business. And the reality was quite a kick in the face. My very first labour ward shift as a first year student midwife, there was the woman we were caring for had a shoulder dystocia. I have to admit, my first year was horrendous. It was you have to facilitate 40 births, and I think I finished my first year on 4, because every other birth that I was around for horrific. They were just horrific. There was hemorrhages. It was awful. I finished that first year thinking, I can't do this. This is just it was horrific. And I think seeing all the intervention, that there was this whooping cough vaccine, and I'd only had a baby 2 years before that. I didn't have a whooping cough vaccine. I don't want to go into things about vaccines, but everything had changed so much in that 2 years since I'd had a baby. There just seemed to be so much more intervention. All this, 2016 was like the birth of saving babies' lives, but I think like it was the dawn of it was probably around then, and it was just my very first university lecture. I remember the lecturer saying, document, document, document. If you didn't document, it didn't happen, and you're going to need these notes because there's not a chance that you're going to get through your whole career without being referred to the NNC. And litigation. It was just like, whoa, this. I just thought I was just going to maybe write something at the time of birth and just, kick back and have a lovely time and just support women to have a lovely birth.
Yeah, I think when I started my career, what your idealistic view of what maternity was like, it was like literally, I think by the time I was in my second year, I'd got 63 births. I was trying and struggling to get abnormal. Like if somebody had a really thick epidural on board and had been in labour for hours, I got shoved in that room and I'd end up with a fucking normal delivery. And they'd be like, what's going on? I need a forceps. Well, I didn't need a forceps because I absolutely hated them. But yeah, it was, I really, really struggled. But I think it was, when I look back now on my career, when I entered into it, it was a really beautiful time to enter in, because I would have been that midwife that would have done being a doula with a degree. And we wrote things and we did document things, but not to the level of, like, we weren't listening in every 15 minutes for a start. We would listen in, but it would be within a time frame. We didn't particularly use symptometry very much at all, if we did use it. And so, but I did notice that massive, like you said about 2016, maybe a massive, I don't know, maybe a bit later, but there was definitely a significant jump, and it is just accelerated. Just before I came down here, so say 10 years ago, the vaginal birth rate then, or the caesarean section rate, was standing at 25%. And in the space of 10 years, it's doubled. Like it's now at nearly 50%. And that's happened in a 10-year slot. When I started my career, it was at 7%. So you can see this accelerative pathway that things have gone on, which is a bit sad, really, because nothing has changed from whereas the women are concerned. I think it's just those teaspoons of fear that they get fed. And I don't necessarily think the women have the fear. I think it's the health professionals that have the fear, because it's drummed into them that you're going to be sued, you're going to be referred, it's all going to be your fault. And then they preach about it not being a blame culture. And actually, that's the very thing that they do is try and look for somebody to blame so that them as an organisation don't have the issues with it.
Controversially, maybe I think I think Saving Babies Saving Babies Lives Care Bundle has a big part to play in it. You know, this government initiative with the best will in the world. I mean, of course, we want to save babies' lives, you know, but it's come at quite a cost. And I think some of the elements are great, but others, they want us to do these things, but we don't have the skills, the equipment, the capacity to do these things well enough. So we're interfering far too quickly, far too eagerly, with the intention of saving babies from passing away from stillbirth. Halving the stillbirth rate was the target, wasn't it? In 10 years. And we're at that point now. We're at the 10, well, we are at the 10-year review now. And
Nothing's changed.
It's certainly not half the stillbirth.
No. And the thing is about anything like that, any sort of government initiative, they come at it from almost like at the wrong perspective. We all know the most beneficial thing that improves health and well-being of people is public health. And it's, you know, the biggest thing that made a massive improvement in saving babies' lives was the reduction of smoking. We know that that you have to give the accolade where it is deserved.
Absolutely. For me, by far, it's been best element of that care bundle. Where I work, we our stop smoking service have won awards. Where we live, there's quite a high poverty rate. A lot of smokers a few years ago, and I think our statistics are some months it's like something like over 90% of women do not smoke, and that's huge compared to where our area was even just a few years ago.
But that's the funny thing about it. Like when I moved down from Northampton, our smoking rate, that had happened 10 years ago. When it first got introduced, that was the target that they went for massively, and we massively improved. Like my friend was on doing a podcast the other day, and like she said, her kids had never even considered smoking, her teenagers. Yeah, it's like not even on their radar anymore. Whereas down here, it still is on a radar of smoking for youngsters, and it's still on a radar of they're not smoking, they're vaping, and that's equally as bad as far as I'm concerned. It's a bit of a, you know, if you're putting anything in that's not supposed to be in there into your body, it's kind of going to have a detrimental effect to some degree.
But we breathe in toxic fumes all the time, so
exactly. You know, and the water that we drink, let's not go to the southwest.
Don't go to the southwest, you'll give it away.
But the whole improvement in maternal and fetal well-being has always been identified and rewarded or improved with housing, water, diet.
Yeah, you've always said that to me.
Yeah, it's always been our health and well-being and taking accountability and responsibility for ourselves. And all of this intervention that's going on now is it's never will improve outcome. It won't. All that is going to do is have a knock-on effect on maternal poor health at the other end, i.e. prolapses, scars, fistulas, bladders, you name it, the whole...
Not just physical trauma, but mental health trauma.
Things like talk chats where you can go and have a debrief after you've had your baby. We shouldn't be having debriefs after we've had our baby. We should be in this celebrated period where we go, I am fucking awesome. Like, I know when I've birthed my babies, that level of achievement that I felt afterwards and how it's trajectoried me into a different place where I never thought I was going to be going. Like when I was a stay-at-home mum with Amber, Jasmine and Louis, I was in my element. I was a brilliant mum and I loved it. Wake up. When I decided to do midwifery when I had Louis, because he was like a £9, 7 baby born at home against all the odds of being told that was what I was ever going to do. It was like, right, I'm going to be a midwife because my midwife had given birth back to me. I am going to be a midwife, you know, and that's why I did, a bit like you, my birth experiences pushed me down that pathway. But equally the same having Honey and Rio. With Honey, I escalated in my career as a midwife, and with Rio, I was 45. He was £11, and I had him at home with a physiological third stage. And I just thought I could do anything. I could do anything. And I did. I up sticks and moved my whole life to a different place. And I met you. He's 14 now. So when we moved down here, he was 6, something like that. So he was at a good age to move down here. But it was like, I would never have done that had I not had children. I'd have just probably just moused around in my life.
Moused. So it was going back to being a student and how eye-opening that was. And it was that prompted me to really kind of start researching birth. Because at the start of my second year, I thought, this isn't for me. I'm going to give this up. I'm going to be a doula. But I was very fortunate. We did case loading back then, and I was assigned 2 wonderful community midwives in a team that were going to be my mentors for pretty much for the next 2 years. And I remember going into a birth with one of them, and she was full of confidence, and she thought I should be confident. And she watched me preparing to facilitate this birth, and I was at that point I was hands off, or hands poised. I think I was then. The jury was out; you could do either. So I was hands poised, and my hands were literally shaking. And she saw that, and she sort of put her hands over mine, tried to calm me down. We had this baby, and afterwards she was like, "What was that?" And I told her how my first year had been, and how I just told her everything, that this isn't for me. And she went, "We're going back to basics." And they nurtured me, and she said, "I don't have bad births." And I mean, of course she did, but it was different with her and the other midwife. I had 2 of them, and they were just such lovely, lovely women. We went back, and they instilled confidence, and they made me carry. They were what made me carry on. But it had started this interest in birth, but not in the obstetric side of it all. Just in, I thought,
the physiology of birth.
Yeah, and I'd see something, I'd go, "Why is that? Why have you done that? What is that?" And the doctors and things would answer, and then they'd complain about me. They'd go to the midwives and say that I was obstructive, or I was rude, or because I'd asked a question. I wasn't telling them they couldn't do it, or I wasn't just curious. Like, what's the evidence to that? Why would we do that? But I got a real interest in it, and I started really reading around it, and that's when I started. And then obviously qualifying and becoming a midwife in my own environment. And it's really hard when you're a new qualified midwife to sometimes to be the midwife you want to be, because you're watched and you don't have that confidence. I mean, I'd always challenge, but I didn't have the confidence to overstep. And so I was just quietly doing my things, and I had a few good midwives that I'd kind of like realized were more on my wavelength. So I'd speak to them, and then you rocked up and gave me the kick up the backside I needed to start having that. And I remember I hadn't met you, but I'd heard about you. Do you want to hear it? The very first time that you'd come down, you'd got this job, you were like a team leader, and someone said, "Oh my God, this new team leader, you'd had to do some like labour ward shifts as part of your..."
It was my first shift on the labour ward, observing an elective section.
I wasn't on shift, but I'd heard this story.
It was a fucking shit show. It really was. The midwife in there had a splint on her hand in the middle of theatre, which shocked me. I then saw these new kind of resuscitaires that was something from the 1950s that you kind of had to yank up and get any oxygen out of.
There was a mouse in the back, probably.
I was just like... And then there was a delay of starting. So I went into an office to do some paperwork. And then somebody went, "Aren't you supposed to be with the electives? They've started." So I just walked in, and people didn't know me from Adam. There was no like labels or anything like that. And then this consultant went, "Get me some gloves." And I was like, "They're over there." Because it was like, I'd never had anything like that. It was just like shocking. That behaviour was stamped out many years ago in other units that I'd worked at. And then the woman was panicking because she could still feel her legs, and they were doing the WHO check. And so I went over and I just gently spoke to her, sort of like reassuring her, telling her they're not going to start while she can still feel your legs. And this consultant came over and shushed me. And I was like, ignored her and carried on reassuring this woman. Anyway, they couldn't get this block in this woman, and she ended up having to have a general anaesthetic. And so I came out of the room to take the dad to the room, and I went up and I went, I don't know who that person is in there, but she's just wagged her finger in my face. And they went, oh, it's so and so, so and so. She's like that. And I went, well, you lot are equally culpable if you let her get away with behaviour like that. And then I took this consultant on, like we had a proper like face-to-face meeting, and I kept going to her, I don't care. You are not the most important person in that room. The woman is. That's how women die, when you don't see them as the most important person in the room. Yeah, and we kind of locked horns ever since then.
Well, my very first experience with her as well was similar, but that's by the by, and yes, it'd been that's what she's like, and I'm like, but hearing that story and everybody saying, "Oh my God, she was amazing," the way she took her on, and rah rah rah, and I thought, I think I'm gonna like this woman.
Wow.
That's how we met and how we became friends. And then I just remember, like, we would talk all the time, and every time I'd had a birth, I'd debrief it with you, good or bad, and I'd say, so I did this, do you think that would have been, or should I have done that? And you were so honest with me, and you'd say, if you didn't, give me tips, but it was also, most of it was reassuring. You were like, no, you did exactly the right thing. Absolutely, you should have stood up. Absolutely, you should have done this, that, and the other. So that, I think that's, and then it just gave me so much, and then I just got so into researching things and evidence. And I know that we don't see eye to eye with that. The evidence isn't, you've always said that you can find a piece of evidence to support any opinion. But it, for me, it helps me to see
Well,
these things.
you're working in a system where they use that evidence. That's the big difference.
But they don't.
Well, they're supposed to, but the thing is, they limit the evidence that they use, and they use the evidence that fits to the narrative that they want to say. And that's why I don't really wholeheartedly believe in evidence. The challenge that we had is that when the medical establishment became like the establishment of the NHS and the medical establishment started to come in, the doctors had already gathered evidence. And that was their leverage, because as midwives, we only had anecdotal evidence. We'd only had millions of years worth of evidence, but we didn't have anything written down. And so that was our challenge then, is that we then had to find evidence to kind of support our thing. But the trajectory of the care pathway had already changed into a medical model by this point. And so whatever was underpinning everything was underpinned by medical evidence. And that's been a hard battle to overcome, I think, from a midwifery point of view. And there are a few things, again, around evidence that I don't like. The first one is you can get a piece of evidence to prove anything that you want. That's my main mantra. The second one is who's funding the evidence, because predominantly it's medical drug companies that really want to prove what they want to prove. And the other thing is that a lot of evidence is people trying to get a doctorate. So they are entering in with an unconscious bias already, entering into that evidence. And I've seen things, like they'll say, only use evidence from this reliable source. Well, that's only a reliable source because that's all they're choosing to research from. And it's not, that's bullshit. That's absolutely bullshit. And in order to prove something, it only needs to be 0.05% in order for it to say it's more favourable for that one. And so for me, there's lots of controversies in and around the evidential thing. The final thing that a lot of people don't recognise is that when that research was done, it's already 5 years out of date by the time it gets published. So and things have changed in those 5 years so significantly, especially now because we're on this accelerated pathway of stuff. So I think it's all bollocks.
That's the joy of why. So that is why I love it. I love critiquing the evidence. So I love that they said this is evidence based, and then you look at that evidence and you're like, but is it though? And it's like it's about how to understand the research, isn't it? And then to critique it and say, well, that was from a sample size of 10 women in Botswana. That's really not relevant to UK women, or and a population here or there. So it's about critiquing that evidence. And you're right about this is why I find I have a little bit of an issue with guidelines, because we update our guidelines every 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever many years, and evidence emerges or research happens and evidence emerges much more frequently, and we don't update our guidelines quickly enough to reflect that. So it's about keeping abreast of what what other things are coming out and from everywhere critiquing that and saying that, the NICE guidelines or the hospital guidelines recommend this. However, this new piece of research has come out that says that maybe this is more. And we all know that in obstetrics, evidence, research, trials, those sorts of things are really hard to come by, to perform, that they're not robust. They can't be. It's unethical. You can't test theories, drugs on pregnant women and babies. It's unethical. So a lot of it just comes from happenstance, from circumstance, from anecdotal. And so the most evidence in obstetrics is not of good quality. And we know that. And for me, it's about letting people know that, yes, the recommendation is this, but the evidence to support it is not very robust. So ask what the evidence is. Ask what the numbers are. Don't accept that this is the recommendation because the evidence says it is, and relative risks as well. The relative risk of this happening. You need actual risk, and you need to know how significant or how robust that piece of evidence is to support the choices that you're making, so that you can make fully informed decisions. And that's where my passion lies now. Is it about choice, birth choices? I would love a role as a birth choices midwife for those women that do not want to follow that pathway, or for them to have an individualized risk assessment, for want of a better term, so that they can make those choices with all the information and be fully informed. And so hard. I can do that for the women on my caseload, but I can't make a bigger change.
Well, the thing about the big changes that they only occur from the medical model. For example, about, I don't know, 8 years just before I moved down here, I can remember a registrar coming into the room at the previous hospital I worked at, into this changing rooms, and she was so excited. Like, you'd have thought she'd won the fucking lottery. She was so excited. And she went, "Have you seen the latest evidence?" And I went, "No." And she went, "There's no different outcome with women being induced at 39 weeks or at 40 weeks for primates." And I laughed. And she said, "What are you laughing at?" And I said, "That's because you're comparing a shit show with a shit show. Of course there's no difference. You already got a massive section rate at the rate of 40 weeks. A week earlier isn't going to change any of that." So that's when they then started introducing, like, offering inductions from 39 weeks onwards. And I was like, but because that works for the narrative of the medical model, it got introduced really quickly as a really robust piece of evidence. CTG monitoring is another prime example. Absolutely no evidence and robust, and there still isn't. And in fact, all of the evidence indicates to the poor impact it has on maternal well-being, physically and mentally and emotionally, and all of those things, and babies. And we don't know what the long-term consequences of babies being yanked out of vaginas with big metal spoons. I think we're beginning to see a big trend in that with ADHD and all of those sorts of because I think there's a massive bonding issue going on there. Read any of Gabor Mate's stuff, and he talks about trauma and the effects of abandonment through trauma and things that happen with parents. He's got this massive link through addiction and ADHD and loads of sort of neurodivergent stuff he studied. So I don't think we understand fully the massive implications of these things, and yet they get introduced. People are convinced that this is a really excellent piece of evidence, and it's bullshit. Sorry, I can say that. I can say that. Not a midwife. It's all bullshit.
There was talking of like doctors and changing rooms. A few years ago, it was when they were updating the intrapartum guidelines, and they'd done the interim guideline, and it was all the changes in there were on the back of the controversial Arrive trial. And an obstetrician came into the bathroom, and we were talking about it, and she was close to tears. She said, "It's awful. It's just awful." And she said, you're lucky being a midwife, because you can influence people not to follow this advice." And she said, I can't as a doctor. I can't at the time. I mean, I know that she could. She could. They do all the time, influence people. But it made me realise that it isn't just, you know, there are some wonderful, really wonderful obstetricians out there that want the best, and I hadn't thought of the bigger picture, that they're also impacted by guidelines and evidence and things, and how, you know.
No, I hear that. I do hear that. And there are some amazing obstetricians, and I've worked with some fantastic consultants and obstetricians and SHOs and registrars and things. And so I'm not knocking them.
No, I know.
I think that fundamentally care has become do-gooding. That they interfere too much. Instead of educating women at the beginning, saying, look after yourself, be healthy, eat well, and investing in public health. Like when I was training as a midwife, we had a whole floor and a whole area that was invested in public health and well-being, where we would go and it had all the evidence, and you could go and you could. One of the things that I did was instigate breastfeeding cafes, because when I was breastfeeding Amber in McDonald's, the manager came up and said, you can't breastfeed in here, you need to go and sit in the toilet. A customer's complained. And I went, well, tell him to go and eat his burger in the toilet. And they went, no, it doesn't work like that. We'll have to call the police. And I went, call the police. Because actually publicly breastfeeding was shamed back, back in the early 90s. I mean, she was 1990, she was born. So one of the things that I could do was go to this public health arena and go, right, I need some stickers. I want to go and ask which cafes are willing to support breastfeeding mums. Well, you wouldn't get that now. It's just, there isn't like a massive drive on the public health where they have this big resource centre like they used to have. And that's actually the thing that makes a difference to health and well-being.
But is that not something that the midwife, we're the first point of contact for most pregnant women? That should be, I mean, like, I know that you and I do it, but that should be something that the obstetricians are typically seen much later on, and that we should be that's
So
part
a
of our
woman
routine.
comes in with a raised blood pressure. Okay. She comes into the clinic, into you for your session, and she's got a raised blood pressure. Now, you and I will sit and talk to her about her raised blood pressure, talk to her about her diet, and probably offer her another blood pressure at home the following day and increase her monitoring of that blood pressure. But primarily, the first thing I would be doing is saying, cut all your shit out of your food, increase your protein, and this will settle down. Increase your fluids and da 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 da. And then if I've done that for a week and there's been no improvement on her blood pressure, then I'll do the next stage, which will be referring, because she's not engaging into that health and well-being and responsibility for herself. A lot of midwives don't do that. They have a raised blood pressure in clinic and they get referred to DAU straight away. They may only do one blood pressure. And actually, one blood pressure on its own is neither here nor there. And I think it's something like 60% of women, when they go to see a midwife or a doctor, have white coat syndrome that they're not even aware of. Because there's so much fear around this blood pressure being preeclamptic that you sit down to take their blood pressure and automatically it's risen, because they want it to be normal at the beginning of their pregnancy. They're all gung-ho for having sort of a normal, low risk, hopefully home birth. And then it doesn't take much for them to be tipped off that scale at all. So I just don't think our first port of call is to medicalise them instead of going, this is a dietary issue. Let's all not panic. Let's sort through and let's catch the ones that are really medically requiring something, and those that are able to be improved by diet and lifestyle changes, then let's support and celebrate them, and go, you're doing a fucking amazing job. Well done. You did this, not us. You did this. When I do bookings with women, I used to say to them, I am not the person that keeps you in your pregnancy well. That's down to you. I'm here to monitor it, support you, advise you, give you information. But you, on how you eat and how you look after yourself, is the integral part of you presenting a healthy pregnancy. I was taught that. I knew it, but I was taught it, and I knew it because that's what my midwives had said to me when I was pregnant with Amber, Jasmine and Louis. It was all very much about, we're here for you, but you've got to do the work. And it's not like that now. People are just, they're scared to. They think they can't do it without a midwife.
But we know women do, and it's something that's on the rise, isn't it? Doing it without a midwife.
Yeah, well, that's the next thing, isn't it? I think they're going to get slaughtered, doulas. I think that they'll be coming for them next. They've managed to eradicate midwives down to obstetric nursing for a big chunk of them, and those that are midwives get targeted, as we know, especially the gobby ones.
Calling me Gobby?
Me.
You, yeah, you.
I was persecuted. It was like a witch and was wrapped in tar and burned at the stake. I mean, for me, that perspective now, when I remember an interim head of midwifery saying to me, don't let midwifery define you, Tess. And actually at the time I remember being, but it is who I am. Actually having stepped away from being a midwife, I couldn't continue being the midwife I wanted to be, which was the person that I had trained, which was the person that was at the top end, looking in the women's eyes, not worrying about the monitors. And, you know, if the woman didn't want to be monitored, then she only had to say, I don't want to be monitored, and I'd whip her off it. I couldn't stay in that arena anymore because it wasn't in alignment with my core values at all, at all.
Yeah, I've yo-yoed since the beginning of my midwifery career, and you know, I'm constantly saying I can't do this anymore. I'm going to be an independent midwife. I'm going to be a doula. I'm going to run a pub, and then I carry on, and it's not an easy career. And I know, God, I know that if I had my time again, I know I wouldn't have taken up the training. I wouldn't have done it. I wouldn't have put myself through all this.
No.
That breaks my heart, you know, because I so thought I was going to be this amazing midwife, and you're just, you know, and I think I am a good midwife. I think
You are a fucking amazing midwife. You really, really are. You are a brilliant midwife. It's just unfortunate the system is unable to recognise midwifery in the skills that it has. And it's lost some amazing midwives. I mean, it's lost me. And I was a good midwife. I was an excellent midwife. I might not have, I was a bit like oil and water because I challenged the system and I recognised that and I ruffled feathers and I did that a lot. Could I have done it a different way? No, because it's not me. Actually, I had to stand there and say, it's not about you. It's about the woman. All the time I kept saying that. I don't know how many arguments or discussions or meetings that I had. I mean, I can remember one manager saying to me, you care too much, Tess. I was like, fucking hell, I'm in a caring profession and I care too much.
I asked if I could reduce the amount of information and the care that I give to women because it's making other midwives uncomfortable.
And you know me, I've always said midwifery is an art, and we are all artists with our own skills that we bring to the table. And it's not our place to say one artist is better than another. We're all creative with that skill that we have, and actually it should be loved and respected. But for me, it boils back down to the witch wound. If I'm doing something my way and you're doing something your way, I'll look at you and go, oh, fair enough, that's the way you want to do it. I wouldn't do it like that. But a lot of people haven't got that skill. They'll look at what I'm doing going, well, she's doing it like that and I'm doing it like this. Either she's wrong and I'm right, or I'm right and she's wrong. So therefore, I'm not going to be wrong, so it's got to be her. Throw her under the bus. And that's a witch wound. That's from centuries ago, that is. Not that you do that stuff. It's a bit much for you.
It is. I mean, I am more open than I was before I met you to that. But I mean, you bought me some tarot cards and some crystals at some point in the box somewhere. But I think that's what makes us work, because we are different, and I respect you, and I respect your thoughts and your beliefs, and you respect us.
I think you're my grounding, but I also think I'm your rise.
Yeah.
So I think we're like roots and wings, and that's what makes us work. I do acknowledge that being on the planet is probably not my hometown.
Some astral plane somewhere else.
But I know that about myself, and I do a lot of work around being grounded, and because I know that if I could be on an astral plane somewhere. And I know when I'm with women that I sit in this space with them, and it is another plane. And I know, Ellie, I know when you are with women, you go in that space too, because the gift of being a midwife is holding space. We're not there to make them give birth or help them give birth. We're there to hold the space, to give them the power and empower them enough for them to step in their own power and give birth. And that's what you do beautifully. And although we do it from a different viewpoint, like I'm on an ancestral planet and you're from the ground, it's the same thing. We are holding space for these beautiful women to step into their power and know that they're safe and they're going to be caught. And that's what women want.
Not for you so much now you're not a midwife, but I find it really challenging to do that. You know, in a maternity service within the NHS, it's very hard to hold space without someone knocking on the door, and it's constantly interrupted.
Yeah. I can remember actually a birth that I had a few years ago, and the think you might have handed me, and you did, you handed this woman over to me, and you said to me, she's in the pool, but he's really like agitated. And you went, I don't know if she's going to do it. And I walked into, and you set the scene really beautifully. You'd really set this scene beautifully. And I went in and he was really agitated. He was like a cat on hot bricks. Like he wanted action. If I wasn't doing anything, then there was something wrong. And so I just kind of like went in and with this really tiny whispering voice and was just like looking at her. And he kept asking me questions. So I kept answering him in a whisper. And he kept like asking me these questions with this booming voice. And I kept going, she's okay. When she wants something, she will let us know. And then slowly his voice came down. And then at one point, we were in this pool with all the lights dark. There was just the pool light on, and she was in this space, and we had this eye contact, me and her. We could hear like an ambulance in the distance and people walking and talking in it, but it was really muffled. And I said to him, this is what it feels like for your baby being in a womb. And it just completely changed who he was. He just like sank into this womb space. It was just amazing. And she just had this wonderful like birth, like this really beautiful birth. And it was really, really wonderful. And it turned out she worked with Jai. She was on maternity leave.
Oh, wow.
Back into work saying, oh my God, I had an incredible birth with this midwife. Da, 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 da. And he said, oh, what was your midwife's name? And she went, Tess. He went, that's my wife. But it was like in that space, listening in every 15 minutes, it was like, yeah, I'm not doing that. That's interruption. That 15-minute listening in is about the medical establishment interrupting that sacred journey that women can go on. They don't need listening in every 15 minutes. It makes no fucking difference.
Unless they want that.
Unless the woman wants it. And that's because the woman births on a different plane. You know, some women want to come in and have all of that medical stuff, and that's what makes them feel safe. And that's absolutely fine too.
Some women want to have a cesarean for whatever reason and plan it. I love those too. I love planning amazing cesarean births with them. You know, really keen to get my teeth. I really want us to start doing those maternal assisted cesareans. I've had one woman want one, but the hospital vetoed it. And I'm like, but there's all this evidence and they do it here. And because I think, you know, if that's what the woman wants to do, I think we should revolutionise cesarean births, particularly as it's like 50% rate. Either stop it or get on board with it and make it as wonderful and women focused and women centred as possible. You know, I love any kind.
I think somebody has just got in touch with me who wants me to do a elective cesarean, support her for an elective cesarean. And she has passed a comment that she wants a lotus. I'm like, yes, you can. And she went, am I allowed? And I went, it's your placenta. They cannot cut that cord unless you consent to it. So they're going to have to carry the baby and the placenta to you. She's like, oh my God, this is so exciting.
It's wonderful. The maternal assisted one. Is she going to get involved?
Well, I'm going to have that conversation with her a bit.
I've got some cracking evidence if you want it. I've got some evidence if you want it.
Send it over, babe. I won't read it, but she will. Listen, if a woman in Brazil can cut her baby out and then to survive herself because the baby was sick, it was baby number 9 or something, I think we make a big drama out of cesarean sections.
Yeah. Oh, I do. I love a bit about my job. I really love my caseload. I love being in the community. I love having a caseload of women. I'm very fortunate. I've got quite a small caseload at the moment, and I think I have that 45% out of hospital birth rate. Well, 45% of women on my caseload want out of hospital births.
Yeah, that's good.
Huge, considering like home birth rate is ridiculously low, isn't it? I mean, I'm not saying 45% of them are going to get it, but and I love that, and I love community births. I love out of hospital births, be that at the birth centre or at home, or I love that's the part of my job that I love, and I don't get to do it enough. And I think if I could just be a community midwife, I think I would be a happy midwife.
When I was a community midwife, it was awesome. We did domino births. So instead of like what we would say to all women who were considered low risk, but all women without any presenting problems or complications within their pregnancy would be assessed at home, and then the decision then would be made whether or not you want to stay or go in. But I also was able to caseload my women properly. I can remember being at a dinner party once, and I knew this woman was niggling in the background, so I'd gone to this dinner party with a bit of a view that she might call me. And my midwife colleague rang me and she went, "Tess, she's fully, but she's not pushing until you come." Okay. Literally walked in, she saw my red Ugg boots and we had a baby, and then I went back to the dinner party. But that was the community spirit of midwifery. That's what midwifery was, and that's when I was, in my element, and that's what needs to be brought back. And
Crying, and it's just there's just no, unfortunately, in this day and age, this environment, this current times, there isn't the focus on it, and there isn't the capacity, because we're all busy interfering, maybe, I don't know.
well, what you have now for training is training for obstetric nursing. It's become all about the meows chart and the ticking the boxes and achieving all of these and fitting into the guidelines.
And because of the fear and because of the intervention pathways, with so much time focus on those things and making everybody at risk of something, that there's so few women that are considered completely low risk. So obviously the resources are redirected towards all those hospital births and high risk pathways.
A strong head of midwifery that's going to come in and go, no, this isn't happening. I am going to take that money and put it here and resource it and project man it and make sure it's all done and skilled properly. And it's going to take a priority. Women are the most important thing here, not you, not your finances, none of that bullshit. Unless you've got a really strong head of midwifery that's going to come in and do that, then you're never going to achieve it. What you have is this horrible system that's layered and layered and layered. And the people that are at the top that have got the say so haven't got a clue about birth. For them, they're running a business. And it's not a business. It's women's business. It's purely around the entity of the women's power. But it's been eroded, eradicated, demolished, and minimalised as if none of that is important. And it's sort of pretty scary.
That's because we're women.
Well, it is. It is because we're women, and it scares me a little bit. I'm like my older children, as you know, Amber and Jasmine. I was there for their baby's births. It was like an incredibly honouring moment, and it was beautiful. I'm scared for Honey having babies. I'll be taking her to a bloody field somewhere. Okay, you're not leaving this field till you have this baby.
My niece is pregnant, and she's asked me, even before she got pregnant, she would talk to me and ask me loads and loads of questions. When she announced her pregnancy over Christmas, I said, "So home birth?" And she went, "Yeah." And I'm like, "All right, maybe it does filter down. I'm hoping she'll do that." She said that she wants me to be there. I'm not sure how I feel about that. I want to, but also it's family, isn't it?
I did it with my girls.
Yeah.
I think that historically that's what we would have done.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah, they ultimately once,
Yeah, and I think there's a great amount of women that start their journey wanting that home birth, and then they get to 36 weeks and it's, oh, you're not growing enough. They need to send you a growth scan. And it's almost like the fear for the midwives now is so great that they don't want the responsibility of missing anything. So they'll send them for that to get it.
oh, you didn't follow the guideline. You didn't do. It's really difficult, isn't it? It's horrible. It's horrible. I spend a lot of my time in this constant state of anxiety about what have I done wrong now? What am I going to be called up on? It's not. It's not.
No, it isn't pleasant. And that's why I had to take the journey that I took, because I was constantly being pulled up for stupid things. Like, I can remember a manager saying to me, "Did you know you did a day 5 on a day 6?" And I went, "Yes, because the woman didn't want it doing on day 5." And she went, "Well, a day 5 should be done on day 5." And I was like, "It can't. She didn't. What if she didn't want it? What if she didn't want it? She's got up to 10 days anyway. It doesn't matter. Why are you making so?" But it's because it affects their statistics. They're not interested in the story behind all of that. They're just interested in their statistics. And it's like, go away, go away. But again, it was like silly little things that you get them pulled up for erodes your confidence. And then every time you go into work, you think, what's going to be happening today? And that's no way to live, because when you are not in your prime state of health and well-being and safety, that affects then the care that you're giving to the women. Is it something like 60% of your level of performance is affected? You know the statistic for that.
I did the training. Yeah, it's something like that's about incivility.
Hmm.
Incivility does affect your performance massively. I think it might. I'd have to relook at it. I think it was like 60%. And even for those that witness someone being incivil to someone, it can affect their performance by about 20-25% as well,
Mm.
because they've witnessed it. So and civility saves lives, apparently. So they say. But yeah. So yeah, it does erode. But it's that's civility. But the whole feeling that you're being pulled up or watched, it's anxiety ridden, and you don't want a poor outcome. Nobody wants a poor outcome.
So beautiful, beautiful times ahead. I think for me on the journey that I'm on now, I am again stepping back into my birthing power. I have spent, and I can't lie, and you know this, a considerable amount of time mourning for the loss of my being a midwife, because I had some amazing, beautiful experiences as a midwife in my career, and I absolutely loved it. It's sad that it's eroded. So Julia, who was the midwife, the reason why I became a midwife, when she retired, she won't even talk about midwifery anymore. I'm not allowed to talk to her about midwifery at all, because that's how devastated that she is. And we shared a really intricate journey on our midwifery pathways together. So she was my inspiration because she was my midwife. She was then my supervisor as a midwife for some considerable time. Beautiful, influential, strong midwife. Particularly the last 5 years of her career was just a total shit show for women. And she said the impact that had on her was heartbreaking. And so she just doesn't want to talk about it anymore.
Does that mean I can't talk to you about midwifery anymore?
No, sometimes it hurts my heart. I can't lie. But, I'm still in that raw stage, aren't I? It's still very raw to me, because I became a midwife to give birth back to women. And in many ways, it's been robbed more from women in the last particularly the last 5 years. It started 10 years ago, but it accelerated in the last 5 years. And you've witnessed that. So for me, it is quite sad, and it does hurt my heart. And I wish that I would be available to more women to give them the beautiful experience and enable them to step into that power, but it was never going to be in that system anymore because, and you know, like you said earlier about you thinking about becoming an independent midwife, I thought about becoming an independent midwife, but I have witnessed what happens when there's a poor outcome in a hospital environment. They do an initial investigation, but the midwife carries on working, the doctors carry on working, everybody carries on working. They have a debrief, they have an investigation, and then if somebody needs a bit of training because they missed something, they do a little bit of training. When an independent midwife is involved with a poor outcome, and it may be nothing that she has done at all, she will be suspended from being able to work and pending that investigation. And those investigations will take years. She will go on trial through the NMC. And that's when I then realised that the NMC aren't there to protect the women like they claim. No different from the NHS that plasters all this stuff on the walls that says that they're here to listen to women and do all of this stuff. They're just words. They're here to protect the system. And that's what really was my final decision of going, "Right, I'm out of this game altogether," because I couldn't stand the corruption that I was witnessing. And that's why I couldn't be an independent midwife, because I have seen the persecution that goes on for those poor midwives. And actually, they're just beautiful women doing beautiful work. Most people are. And it's hard when you have to be like you staying in a, like I was the main earner in our household. Obviously, our finances are a bit squeezed in this new regime that we're in. But that was a brave decision on my part to take.
And I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud of you doing it and how far you've come. I mean, look at you now. Little, do you call it a caseload?
Yeah, I suppose it is. I just call them women, really.
Yeah, a little caseload of women that you know, and it's growing all the time. I'm so proud of you. You've done that.
Oh, I have. I mean, if you think it's a year ago, really, that I really started on this journey. This time last year, I started networking because I was a virgin at business and an expert in vaginas. I'm still no expert in business, but it is beginning to take off. And I am beginning to reach other places. I am going on a podcast with Kemi, your girl crush.
Yep.
So I'm really excited. I'm
Yeah.
going to be doing that, and hopefully she's going to come on and do a little podcast with me, which will be really nice. Yeah.
I look forward to that. Yeah.
And my boxes are ready.
Are they?
Yes.
My soap's lovely, by the way. It's in my shower. I use it every day.
Do you? You like it? Which you got the
Yeah,
look.
there's just not a lot of the pink glitter left on it now. I've kind of like eaten most of. Used most of that. got a little bit still going through it, but the over, yeah, I just love it. I love it.
Do you like the glitter part in it? Because that was a bit of an experiment on my part.
Do I like glitter? I like the glitter.
I might put more through the next batch that I make if it's only in the pink one, because the lavender one is a bit more postnatally relaxing, and the lemon and peppermint one is for
This one's just for night out, yeah.
it's for that's the pregnancy one, isn't it? That's all like luscious and sexual and keep those love hormones going.
That oxytocin flowing.
Get that oxytocin flowing. We all know how much we need that in our lives. So yeah, that's been quite an incredible journey then, our birthing journeys, and yeah, our little touch on our career journeys there, although not too in depth. So just enough. I mean, I think it's given a fair reflection to the listeners that a lot of midwives, and I think this has changed now, a lot of midwives were sparked into a midwifery career because they had had birth experiences and they were well able to do that. I think it now being a degree course, that's much harder for a lot of more experienced women to come through. And so we have an awful lot of young midwives, student midwives, and a lot of them more so now. Like when I did my training, I would say 75%, if not more, were mums, women, mature women that had had experiences of life behind them. I think it's completely the opposite now. I think maybe 10 or 15% are women with life experiences, and a lot of them are just young girls doing student degrees.
Yeah, I mean, and that's probably with taking away I mean, I wouldn't have been able to do my retraining without the bursary. But by saying that, I have to say that the young girls that I trained with, the majority of them were incredible and have gone on to be incredible midwives as well. I don't always think that it's an age thing. I just do think that we definitely need a mix. And I don't think it's necessarily so much the degree that's been the issue. It's more the stopping of the funded degree, because it has closed the door for a lot of people who have to give up an already existing career to retrain as a midwife. And it's not so easy when you're in that position, or you've got families, as it is when you're younger and you're going to have student debt, whatever degree you did.
No.
So yeah, I think that's been a huge problem with getting that diverse mix of people wanting to be midwives.
And plus, the younger girls are less experienced at challenging some of the things.
Some of them are,
So they
yeah.
are more likely just to come in and tick the boxes and follow the regimes and go by the guidelines and not divert away or challenge that at all. Or if a woman comes
But then
in,
that's up to us, isn't it? It's up to the education side of things, and it's up to midwives to be able to influence them in a more positive way, to be able to challenge. And the degree part is just part of it, isn't it? Becoming a midwife, they need that nurturing, and they need to have strong role models to be able to pass that knowledge on to them. And I think we're severely lacking in that now.
definitely. And it's sad, really. It's sad. And there are some amazing, don't get me wrong, young girls that want to go into this career and go into the career with the view that it's going to be this, oh, I just want to help women have babies. And then actually they get in there and they're just slaughtered. That's why so many leave so quickly. There are so many more midwives now that are leaving their career at the time that you, like your sort of 10 years, 8, 10, 13 years, that kind of. But did that in my day, it was like an unheard of thing. You became a midwife and it was a forever job. And now people are going into it and they've got burnout by 5 years. They just can't cope with it anymore because it's not what they thought they were buying into at all.
Well, there's no jobs as well at the end, wasn't it something like out of every 30 student midwives that qualify, 29 don't go into the career for one reason or another? I think, I'm not sure that stat is right. They're scrabbling around for the jobs at the end of it. There are so many recruitment freezes, and it's just such a mess. And I just wish we had a magic wand that we could wave and we go back to midwifery how it was, but also safer.
Yeah.
Not that it was safe, but everything. It would be wonderful, wouldn't it, in an ideal world?
Yeah. I mean, we've got that many specialist midwives, which get counted in the numbers. They shouldn't be in the numbers. They shouldn't be. Your midwives that are dealing with the bread and butter of women's care is the midwife numbers that we need to be looking at, not including the other 35 specialist midwives that we've got on site. As we know, a specialist is somebody who knows more and more about less and less until they know absolutely nothing.
I don't know. We need specialist roles. We do need them, but you're right. They don't, especially when they're not because their roles are, doing what they need to do. But it does,
And when you
really
step into that specialist role, you remember your role as a midwife in a really romantic way. That what you did, I wouldn't have done it like that. I wouldn't have done it like that. And it's like you've been in that role for 4 years now, and so it's actually changed quite considerably from what the role of the midwife is doing. And you're not in a threatening position, because it can be quite threatening being in a birthing arena when things are going a bit south. It can feel quite a threatening place to be, quite emotionally eroding. And if you're going in and just doing a Monday to Friday job, 9 to 5, it's easy to sort of sit on your high horse about how it ought to be. Anyway, that's for another conversation. Yeah, we'll end. Ellie, it was been amazing. Thank you so much for joining me. We'll pick a subject next time and we'll dissect it to the nth degree, and you can pull up all your research. I love you so much. You're an absolute star. Thank you very much for coming on and making my day. Finally, you were worth the wait.
Thank you.
You are the best. And I love you very much.
I love you more.